private lessons, so after this class. And then she also has some art pieces for sale at the Star Valley Mercantile. So that is a little bit about Kayle, and she's going to go ahead and get started. We're going to change the way we do things a little bit today. Kaylee's going to give you instruction first, so don't follow along yet. She's going to do instruction first, and then she's going to do step by step along the way. So listen to the instruction. Those of you that get it and can move ahead, go ahead and start your working after she finishes giving all the instructions. Those of you that need, more paced step-by-step instructions, go along with Kayle when she does that in the second part of the class. All right, and here is Kayle.
And really, it's my turn.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got to do this every week. Sorry about that. So, Kayle, welcome. And we're getting a lot of feedback, but sorry about that. First, I got to thank the sponsors for this program, the Lincoln County Library System. Hold on here. The Kimmer Senior Center, Lincoln County Library Foundation, and the Lifetime Arts in cooperation with the May and Stanley Smith Charitable Trust. So with that, I'm going to shut up and go, Kayle.
Okay, great. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so I just want to kind of cover really quickly what we did the last couple of times. And I do actually have a headphone in my ear this time, so hopefully I can hear you. Actually, can you guys hear me? Are you hearing okay?
Yes.
Oh, so they can hear me. So if you guys can hear me, just say, yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good, good, okay.
Yes, we can hear you in Alpine.
Great, thank you. That's right. There's an echo in my ear. Okay, so if you remember, the first day we did drawing, which is the foundation of our paintings, right? Last time we talked about value. What does value do for us? Anybody? Yes, in our class, we had the answer. It gives us shading and highlight, which is correct. What else does it do? We do add texture with it. We add definition with it. So basically what all these things are saying is it's what gives our object shape. If we have lighter or darker on our objects, that's what makes it look three-dimensional. Okay, so today we have a really fun, well, I think it's fun. We get to start color today, so that's exciting. Melissa, could we switch to the slideshow? And it's the one with the color wheel lesson. Mm-hmm. Does everybody see the slideshow? Good, good. I see thumbs up. That's great. Okay. So we're going to take it really basic here for a minute. What are the primary colors? Yep. Feel free to say it out loud if you want. Yes, in our class, we had someone say red, yellow, and blue. So those are our primary colors. It's the same in painting. What are secondary colors? Can anybody guess? Yes, green, orange, and purple. So what these are, obviously, is the mix between the primaries. So if you want orange, you mix red and yellow. If you want purple, blue and red, right? So these are super basic principles. but you use them all the time in painting. There's several other things that I'll talk about kind of as we're going. Now, you need to know going into this that color theory is really complicated. So don't expect it to be like, this is so easy. It is complicated. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But the way we learn it is practice, okay? So I'm going to show you how I do it and how I approach mixing colors. Let's see. Let's do the next slide. Okay, so within color theory, there's things that we call color schemes. And basically, those are the main colors within a composition or a painting. So here's just some examples. So a monochromatic, this first one, that's if you use all of one color, just lighter and darker versions of one color. That's monochromatic. Analogous, the second one, you're using colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. Now you can use lighter and darker values, but you use just those colors next to each other. Complementary, which is probably one of my favorites and probably one that you see a lot in painting, is when you're using the color across from it on the color wheel. These second row, I'm not really going to talk too much about those. They're a lot more complicated. But the three top ones are the ones that are easier enough to pick out in painting. So if we go to the next slide. Now these are some paintings done by Josh Clare, who is a really, really great landscape artist. And he was actually one of my teachers at BYU Idaho. But if we look at that picture on the left, what color scheme do you think he used? Anybody? Yes, complementary. So in our class, someone said complementary. So if you notice, there are blues, there are a few yellows, but the main colors that you see are red and green. Those are complementary colors. And they look really good together. That's why he does it. He's very good at using simple color schemes, and they're really effective. So let's look at the one on the right. What would you say for this one? Yeah, we can, let's flip back to these are the options of what he could be doing. Could be. So when I look at it, I like to think, okay, what colors am I seeing? So I see yellow, I see blue, I see red. So even though I didn't talk about this one, so on the second row, it says triad. Yeah, so he's using the complementary colors, right? Red, yellow, and blue. And see how effective it can be in a painting. Doing this, picking a color scheme, really just simplifies your thought process and helps you to not get overwhelmed by the color that you see in a painting. So let's look at our examples. Oh, I lost my headphone. One second. Okay. So if you guys have, I have my paintings here. Yeah, so we have this. If you guys have your pictures, your reference pictures, you can look at them. But what color scheme would you call this? And you don't have to have the exact name. You can even just point out the main colors that you see. Oh, on the middle, on the top, on the slideshow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, red and green. Yeah. So when you're doing a color scheme, it's not so important that you're like, I am doing this one. Sometimes you might want to pick and go that way. But yeah, the red and green are playing off each other. So that can be one. But like you said, this is actually considered in the red family. So I would call it red and green, a complementary.
So even though you have oranges and whatever in
Mhm.
it, it's a red family, so it's
Yes. So in our class, we had the comment that even though there's some variation in the colors, and they're like families of colors, and that's a really excellent way to look at it because it's a painting, it's nature, it's life. It's not going to be all one color, but we're in the family, right? Yeah. Okay. Depending, so I have a question about the color red, and how you would use it, or if you want to dull it down or choose that over orange. And it just depends on the situation and what your goals are with your painting. So depending on what it is you're painting, if you're painting a basketball, you might want that bright orange. If you're painting something from nature, you might want something softer. So it all depends on you and what you're doing. Okay. All right. So let's go to our palette. Well, I didn't think there was anything else I wanted to. Okay. So we're doing pretty much the same thing as last time, but we're doing it with color. Now this, it sounds simple, but it's going to be more complicated. So we're going to really take it slow. So I'm going to go over the process and what I want you to do. And then I'll let you paint and then we'll go slowly step by step. Okay, so I believe in using a limited palette. That means you're using red, yellow, and blue. Now, they have all different kinds. They have all different kinds of paint colors. You can go to the store and you can buy all kinds of greens and purples and just so many colors. And they each react very differently. So I keep my palette limited. I have, so for my personal paints, now they'll be slightly different than yours, but I use a red. And depending on what I'm painting, I have a cool red. That just has to do with color temperature. You see those? So one is warmer and looks more like orange, and this one looks a little more pink. So that's a cool red and a warm red. Every color has temperature. So I use those two. I use on my yellows again. I use a yellow, which is technically temperature neutral. And then I have ultramarine. This is the main blue I use, but I also have a little warmer blue. That's Magnes blue. Now in your kits, I'm gonna look at your kit really quick. You have CAD red, so you'll be using that one. You'll be using French ultramarine, which is blue, and the CAD yellow. Now, if you really are against mixing greens, you are welcome to use these greens, but I always think it's better to just start with your red, yellow, and blue. With the exception, I do use burnt sienna, and we will use burnt sienna in these paintings. So I do recommend playing with that one a little. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put them out on our canvas. Now, I think I said last time, I have grays down the left, colors around the top. This keeps the colors organized. It helps us to have a mixing space in the middle. And it's just helpful to kind of keep our brains a little bit organized. My headphone keeps falling out of my ear. Okay, as you can see, I don't have much paint left in my yellow. All right. So red, yellow, and blue. And I do want to use that burnt sienna that you guys have in your kits. That is a good one to use as well. Now, if you are painting a lot, it's helpful, I've found, to have flyers in your painting stuff because it's really hard sometimes to open these paints. Okay, and you're also going to want to get out your white and your black because if you use up your grays and or your whites and blacks, you will want to refresh them. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing that we did last time. So if we're going to just take our canvas and we're just going to draw our picture on it quickly. Now remember, this is not going to be a finished painting for display. This is just for practice. This is so you can figure out what colors you want to use and so you can practice with the paintbrushes, okay? So do not stress if you're not getting finished when time is running out. This is just for practice this time, just like last time, okay? Do you guys, which painting would you like me to do? Do you want me to do the one with the grapes or the one with the oranges? Okay, we have a vote for oranges. Does anyone have?
Yes.
Oh, and yes, we are using small canvases again. Unless, you know, we did have those extra ones. If you want to work bigger, as long as you have a big canvas for your final one, you're welcome to use the bigger one, but I would recommend a smaller one just because it's faster and less paint waste. So we're going to use the small canvas. These canvases that I'm showing you are a little bit bigger than yours, just because I brought it from home. Yes, okay. This is my sound. So this is the one you'll be using, the smaller one. Mine is just a little bigger, just hopefully you can see a little better. Okay, thank you. Okay, so is everyone okay if we show the orange example? Okay. So here's my example, right there. You notice this is a little bit sloppy, and that's okay because my goals with this were to figure out my colors for the final painting. All right. So we're just gonna take this or your reference photos if you have them nearby, and you're just going to draw. I'm going to move my paint palette out of the way for a minute. Just quickly draw. Don't spend too much time on this, but we're going to draw it. So like I said, right now, you really don't need to try to keep up. We're just going to show you what to do. So I won't do super detailed drawing on this. So we're doing big basic shapes. Got my table. I tried to pick a darker pencil, so I'm hoping you guys can see this. I'm not going to take tons of time to measure. I just want my basic drawing on there. Thank you. So my drawing isn't going to be perfect this time. Can you guys see that a little better? We're trying to figure out lighting and stuff, so. Okay, so very simple, basic drawing. Can you see that? Yeah, okay. Not anything fancy, just our basic. Oh, need a better headphone. Okay. So simple drawing. Now this is where it gets a little harder. So we're going to work the same way that we did with our black and white paintings. We're going to start in the background and we're going to work forward. So when I look at the painting that I'm copying, or the image, if you're looking at your reference picture, the first thing I do is I look at the background and I say, what color is it? It's green, right? You guys see that it's green? So I'm going to take, oh, not red. I promise I do know how to mix my colors. Okay, so we'll start with blue and yellow. Now it's best not to start with just tons and tons of paint. Just start with a little. And we're just going to mix green. You guys see that that's green? This dark. So we're doing that folding motion again that we taught last time. Now, obviously, if we look at this green and we look at our picture, it's pretty different, right? And so I always say to myself, how is it different? So in this case, this green is a lot brighter than the green in the painting that we're copying. So that's where grays come in handy. And here's another trick. When a color is too bright, if you add the complement, which means the color across the color wheel, it will dull it down. So I'm going to show you that. So if I take just a little tiny bit of red and I mix it in, it will dull it down a lot. Okay. Oh, yes, it is a really dark green. We're talking about the background. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it only takes a little bit to make a difference. So when you're mixing colors, don't take big scoops of paint. Just touch your palette knife in, and just that little tiny bit will make an adjustment. It's better to adjust your colors slowly than to do it too fast and have a whole pile of paint that you can't use. What's that? Yes, and I do want to remind you, don't try to keep up with me right now. I'm just teaching you the basic how. If you watch and then you can understand, and then I'll go back and I'll walk through it slowly. So I'm just showing you, these are the questions that I ask myself as I'm mixing. So obviously, if we look at this again, it doesn't match still. It's still bright. Okay. So our background green is dark green, you're right, but it's also a very gray green. There's not much color in it. So I like to work with gray a lot. We could continue to add red, and that would take out some of the colors still. But in this case, I'm just going to use some of my gray, which we had left over from last time. And I'm going to mix that in. And that's going to gray down the color a lot as well. So it almost looks more like gray now, but it is green. It's a lot closer. So I always like to hold it on my palette knife and kind of hold it up to my picture or my painting that I'm trying to match so that I can compare the colors. The best way to get the right color is to compare it often. So it's pretty close, except for it's a bit lighter than the one on the canvas. So I'm going to take a little bit of black. Now, black, a little bit of black goes a really long way. So definitely start with just a little at a time. So I'm just adding a little bit of black. So this will take practice to know what questions to ask yourself, to know what to do with the color. So a lot of today will be experimenting for you to figure out how to get a color that you want. So I'm going to show you this. I'm comparing again. Now it's dark. It's probably even a little bit too dark, but it's still a little bit more green than I want it to be. So I'm going to go back to my red. Just a little bit. Right. Yeah. So the question was, do you have to clean your knife every time in between? And the answer is no. I clean it between when I'm changing the color I'm mixing. So the way you get really earthy greens is adding red to green. That sounds so crazy, but that's the best way to get an earthy green. Okay, I'm going to hold this up again, and we're getting pretty close. Can you guys see that? So I'm going to add a little bit, just a tiny bit of white, because I felt like I went a little dark. And I'm even going to add just a touch of yellow. That's just my instinct telling me I need to do that. Yes. 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 The question is, it takes a lot of practice. And yes, it does. To know, it kind of becomes an instinctive thing to know what you want to do with the color to get it to where you want. So I've been in a lot of like professional classes, and people get very caught up on, oh, how much of this color did you mix in? Did you write down your formula? And I feel like that's kind of beyond the point, because you know how the color wheel works. If you understand that and you've had the practice, it's just about comparing. Oh, this is not dark enough, so I add dark. This is too dark, so I add light. It's too green, so I'll add gray or red. You know, it's just knowing those things, and it will take practice, but it's fun practice. So yes, so it does seem against nature to put the complementary color into it. But what complements do is when they're straight colors and they sit right next to each other, they make each other look brighter. When they are mixed together, they dull each other down. So adding red to the green just makes it an earthy green, right? That just, it seems weird, but it really is a really good, I love to mix compliments. So now I've just been tweaking and tweaking, and I wish you could see this in person, but it's pretty close. And if I wipe that onto my canvas, it will blend in, and you can tell that it matches. Okay, so I added yellow because my brain told me I should add yellow. I just felt like, so you use not red, yellow and blue to make green, and I felt like it was leaning a little bit blue, so I just touched a little bit of yellow to make sure it wasn't going too blue. I hope that makes sense. And I just added a little bit, and maybe it didn't make any difference. For me, it did. So what we'll do is once you mix a color for a section, you'll take a brush. Now I brought my brushes from home today, so they won't match what you have. But that's kind of a good thing because I want you to practice with the brushes and see what feels good to you, not what feels good to me. So we're going to do the same way that we did before. Yes. Picture. Okay. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing as before. Oh, I'm leaning my head in my headphones. Okay. And we're going to start with the background. Now, I will say, I think that colors look different on your palette than they look on the canvas. When I'm painting this on the canvas, I'm like, oh, it looks pretty dark. Part of that is because it's surrounded by white right now. And part of it is just because they look different. So I'm going to use white. So the same with the grays, how we had our base colors and then we tweaked a little as needed. We do the same thing with color. So it's a little bit dark, so I'm going to add a little bit of white. That was too white. I should have done that in here. Okay. So on my palette, I'm just going to tweak a little. Then I have a little bit of lighter green, and I have my darker green still that I can pull from, and I'm just going to paint that background. Now remember, if the paint feels too thick as you're painting it on, just touch in your Gamma-Sol just a little bit, and that will loosen the paint, and it just glides on. So they always say, you'll hear artists say a lot, fat over lean. Us mixing the Gamma-Sol makes the paint lean. So that's better to do for like backgrounds and first layers. And then as we move into details, you'll want to not be doing that. I hope that makes sense? So this is really just kind of a beginning step. Okay. I think I'll be okay if I get my head to this way. Okay. So I'm just kind of putting the colors on now. I'm kind of mixing my dark with my light because in the picture, it's not like a flat color, right? And just so I know what I'm going to do on my final painting, I'm mixing that a little bit. Now you can choose to be as detailed or not detailed as you want on this painting. I want you to practice with the brushes. I want you to practice mixing colors and just getting paint on the canvas. Okay. So those are the basic steps. So now if you feel comfortable with what you need to do, you're welcome to just start working on the background or continue the painting. So after you do the background, next move to the next object and attempt to mix that color. Okay. But I'm going to stay here. I'm actually going to pause for a minute and let everybody kind of get caught up to where they are. So I want you to get your paint squeezed out on the palette, get your things set up, and then start trying to mix this. Well, if you're doing this painting, you'll mix this green. If you're doing the grape painting, then you'll start with this background color. Now you get a little bit of cheat on this painting because I'll tell you a secret. This color, this color is just your burnt sienna. So you get a little bit of a cheat. That's a secret. Okay. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and I want you guys to get your things set up and kind of get going. And then once everyone kind of says they're ready and going, then I'll continue with this one step by step. Unless you want me to move to the other one, then I can switch. That's fine too. Okay, so facilitators, when you feel like everyone's set up and ready to go, and you're ready for me to start going step by step through this, just give us a thumbs up on the chat so that we know. And as always, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, I just wanted to tell you guys, we were having a conversation here. In my painting, I interpreted this background color to be more green than your guys' photo printouts. So that was a choice that I made as an artist when I was painting. I decided I wanted it to be a little more green, and that's okay. So you can try to match your photo, or you can try to change it a little bit if you want. The point is that we are not cameras. We're not trying to be cameras. We are artists and we are in control. So if you don't want your background to be that gray, it's okay to let it be a little more green. So it's totally your choice. It is good practice to try to match colors exactly, because if you can do that, you have a lot of control over your colors. So your choice on that, but don't be alarmed if your color doesn't look exactly like mine. It probably won't look the same over the camera anyways, but just know there is some variation in those colors. Yes. So Richard did talk about rather having too light than too dark. It's just harder to lighten up a darker area than it is to darken a light area. So when in doubt, do it a little lighter than you think, because you can always darken it a little bit in the areas you need later. It's just easier to fix than if you have it too dark. So this is where our value studies combine, because we're using color, but we're also having to think about how light and how dark our colors are. So color mixes value, light and dark, with hue and temperature and all those other qualities that color has. Okay. Is everybody okay with me continuing with the orange painting? I'm going to go on with that one. If anyone has a question about the other one, just let me know. I'm going to push this up a little bit. Okay. So I'm just kind of alternating between my lighter green and my darker green. And just like with our painting last time, I'm not going to take the time to paint the entire background. I know that this is the color that I want, so I'm just going to kind of continue and just kind of get my edges so I can really get a feel for the painting, but I'm not spending too much time. Obviously, my edges aren't perfect, and that's because this is kind of an experimental painting, and because if you are painting, it's better to overshoot your lines a little bit. So when you put the next color on, it's like it creates a good edge. You don't want what's called a halo, which is when there's a gap between colors where you can see the white canvas underneath. We don't want that. So right now I'm using a square edged brush. I tend to lean towards those because I like crisp edges. That's probably because I like graphic design and I do that too. It just makes me lean towards those. You do not have to use a square edged brush. It's the filberts that you have are really nice for this type of thing as well. So generally when you're painting, you'll use an easel. Now we don't have easels this time, and that's fine because our paintings are pretty small. But the reason why artists use easels is because one, the lights kind of glare as we know from the cameras, but also your perspective of how you're seeing your painting is more accurate when it's tipped up. When it's laying down, it's moving away from you, which isn't too much of a problem when you're doing small paintings, but if you're doing bigger ones, an easel is definitely recommended. Okay, when everybody has their background painted, let me know and I will move on to the next object and we'll go through mixing that color, which for this painting will be the pot, which the vase in the other painting is similar in value and color, so you'll be able to apply it to both. So when everyone's ready to mix the next color, saying thumbs up or just in the chat, let us know that you're ready. Emma said they were ready. Okay, great. Okay, so I don't want to waste this paint because we worked really hard to mix it, right? And we'll be able to use it on our final one. So we're just gonna scrape it into a pile. Now keep in mind, there's still a lot of paint on the back of my palette knife and I don't want to waste that either. So I'm just gonna pick a spot. It's green, so I'm gonna put it between the yellow and blue. I'm just using my brush to scrape it off into a nice little pile because we can use that later. Now we're gonna want to clean off our brush and our palette knife. With the palette knife, I just take a paper towel and I just squeeze it in between a couple of times and it pretty much cleans off all the paint. Now, obviously we don't want to work on this mess, so you can either use a paper towel or your razor blade, and we're just going to kind of clean that off because where we're starting a new color, we want a clean working area. My razor blade has been used so much, I will probably use both. I'm going to grab another paper towel. Thank you. So at home, when I'm painting, what I do, I actually have a larger palette. Oh, I think I just turned off my headphones. Okay, so at home I have a very large piece of glass actually. That way I don't have to clean it off in between every color. So, if you're ever having a painting set up at home, a bigger palette is definitely beneficial if you're trying to save time, just because then you don't have to clean in between every color. Now, I know that my next color, I'm going to do the pot here, is going to be a light color. So knowing that, I'm going to get out my white and I'm going to add more white to my palette because light colors use a lot of white. That's why we have an extra tube of white in our painting things. Oh. Okay, so we're going to add more white to the palette. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to use my pliers again. Okay. So if you notice, my white is huge. It's always good to have a lot of white on hand. Yeah, I could hear it clicking out. Okay, so we're getting the camera back online, but where we're starting with a lighter color, I'm going to start with white this time because I know that it's a light color. So I'm just going to scoop some white in the middle. Now, if you guys look at this color, this is kind of a tricky one. What color is it? Oh, and someone had a question. Is that Kemmer? If you have a question, feel free. So it is common for your white paint to get dirty. It's still usable if it's not too dirty. So feel free to add more white if you need to, if you want clean, fresh white, because we have white paint. That's why we got an extra. And remember, this is practice. This would be a good chance to see what happens. If you want to see what happens if you use white that has a little bit of color in it, try it. Let's see what happens. You do not have to start over. If you want to, you can. I know some people have a hard time like, but it's dirty. But painting's all about mixing things together. So no, you do not have to start over. Maybe just see what it does. Obviously, I can't see your white to know, so you're gonna have to use your best judgment. I have not mixed my white yet, so it's sitting here. So we need to look at the pot and decide what color it is. Cream. Cream's a good answer. Can you get even more specific? What color is it? Yes, I heard a touch of red. So I would call it orange. So it's kind of a tan. So it's a dulled down orange. So it's very, very white. So if we take red and we just touch it, now look how little that is. I have just touched it. Now I have a maybe blue. And actually, this is a reflective surface. So there are parts of it that will look more blue, and there are parts of it that will look more orange because it's reflecting the oranges and the bowl. But generally, I'm going to call it tan, which is a light brown, which is made with orange that's cooled down. That sounds really complicated, but basically, I'm deciding in my head that it's orange. Okay. So I just barely touched my red and I'm going to mix it in. Now see how much difference just that little bit made. Now again, if you want to just watch this process before you start doing it yourself, that's totally fine. So this is very light. It's pretty good on value because again, we're comparing, but it's very pink. Oh, it's very pink in comparison. So I haven't added my yellow yet. So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. Again, I just barely touch it. We don't want it to overtake the white. So I add just a little bit of yellow, and that little bit just changes it so much. So this is actually fairly close. It might be a little bright. So if you're getting a lot of paint on the back of your palette knife, just push it down really hard and that will just kind of push the paint off of it, and then you can stir that in. So I'm going to look again. And it's still a little bit pink, but not bad. I'm going to say it's a little bit light, but I don't want it to be too dark. So I'm going to, I'm trying to decide what I want to do. I'm actually going to leave it because this matches pretty good with the lighter sides of the pot. And like we were talking about before, if we start light, we can darken it later. So I'm actually going to use this. Now, if it looks too light when we put it on the canvas, we can adjust it again. Apparently my ears don't fit my earphones. Okay. So I'm getting my paintbrush out. So I'm using a little bit of a bigger brush because I want it to fill more area faster. Let me move my palette knife out of the way. Oh, I just got my canvas and paint. Okay. Do that. Okay. So because the light is coming from the left, I'm going to kind of start on this side because this is where it should match the best. So if you can see, it's really subtle. My pencil is kind of mixing with the paint a little bit. So don't be alarmed if your pencil is kind of mixing with it a little. That kind of happens. That's why we don't usually use pencil under oil paint. We use charcoal, which we will do later, but even charcoal will mix a little. As you keep going, it will mix in. So don't stress too much. Okay, so I'm just gonna fill in basically this whole pot with this one color, even though there's some variations. And then I'll go add some of the variations on top just so I can figure out what color I want the shadows to be. But for right now, we're just filling it in. So as you can see, I kind of touched that background color with my brush and it pulled it in. That's okay. Oil paint is very forgiving. So I'll just like wipe out my brush and just go over it and it will just blend right in. That's one reason that I really like oil painting is it's hard to make a mistake that you can't fix. Which part do you want me to do again? Okay. I'm going to hold this up closer. And as you can see, I got a little bit of green in there. So I'm just going to wipe my brush on my palette, get some fresh color, and just go over it until it goes away. You see that? Now, oil painting is messy. As you can see, I already have it all over my hand. Good, I'm glad. Oh, see, I just did it again. Honestly, it happens all the time. So it actually has altered it just slightly. Doesn't usually bother me very much because it's okay for there to be some variations in color. But it has to do with the amount of paint and with the texture of the paint. The paint in the background is more wet, it's more lean, it's kind of more watered down. And the white paint I'm using isn't as watered down. And so it kind of just brushes it away. It kind of mixes in. It's so little that it's not having much of an effect. Now for my handle, I'm going to switch my brush just because I can't get my curve. Now I do tend towards the flatter brushes. That's just a me thing. Oh, so this is the one I'm using. Again, you don't have these in your set. Your set's different than mine. So just make sure you try different ones and use what's comfortable. I'm using a smaller one just to go around this handle because I want it to not get too much in the background. Okay, so I want to add a little bit of shadow to my pot. And not that I'm too worried about detail, but I do want to make sure that I have the value and the color of the shadow on this chosen for my final painting. So I can try a few things here. I can grab a little bit of my dark green that was the background. And I would do this because the pot's reflective. And so it makes sense that it could reflect the darker color. I would just kind of mix it a little bit. So I don't want it to be as dark as the background. So I'm just gonna put that over. But I also don't want it to be too gray. Now I didn't change the value very much because I wanted it to be lighter in case I need to make it darker. So I'm trying to decide, do I want it to be this gray, greenish gray, or do I want it to have a little more color to it? So what I chose in this one was I kept it gray on this side, and then I put in some orange and some blue. Now it was too much on this one, but this was practice, right? So I can see, but I wanted to get a little more color in my pot. So that's why I did that. And I do want you guys to actually try that because this is kind of fun. The same way we fixed our mistake, how the color just kind of blended in. If you do that with some of these colors, it will change it subtly also to look more reflective. So I'm just touching my orange, well, it's red, just a little tiny bit, like you can't even see it on my paintbrush. And I'm just gonna lightly put that in there. And I don't know if it will show on the camera, but it's changing it just a little, which I think makes it more interesting. So I'm gonna do same with blue. Now blue is a lot stronger. So I'm gonna, after I've touched it, I'm kind of working it out a little bit because it's just a stronger color by nature. You'll find that different colors just behave differently just because of the color that they are, which is kind of interesting, but just kind of does that. Now the blue doesn't look as blue. I'm pretty sure on mine I used this manganese to make it brighter, but it still looks blue, just not as bright. And I felt like it's getting a little gray, so I'm going to add my original color back on top. It's all about little adjustments. Now, if I still felt like this was a little cold, you might do the same thing by just taking a little bit of orange. So brown is technically made with orange and blue. So I can take orange and blue. And I'm just kind of mixing. Oh, see, that went a little crazy. So I'm not going to do that. Take my original color. Oh, we have our burnt sienna right here. That's a pretty good brown. It's a reddish brown. So I'm just going to take a little. Now I like that much better. So I'm just going to add some of that warmer color to my shadow side. Now it's a little thick. I'm just going to loosen it just a little. Now you do not have to do all these steps. You're just trying to figure out how you want it to look, the colors that you want in your final painting. This is the chance to try it. Try, experiment with what you want. Nobody's going to see or judge these. For which, Kimmer, which color? Sorry, there's just a lot of colors, so I'm trying to be clear on which one. So if you're talking about this color that I added to the shadow side, it did actually alter it slightly by my eyes. You might not be able to see it over the camera. But it did alter it slightly. Now there is a highlight on the pot, but I'm not really going to worry about that for this time because I know I'll be using white. Now there are more details and stuff here that will be slightly different colors, but I'm not really worried about those today. What I'm worried about today is the main elements and the main colors. And if there's one that I think will be a challenge that I want to figure out, then we'll figure it out. Okay. When everyone is done with their pot, or in, I guess I should talk about this one a little bit. If you're doing this one with the grape, we approach this color the same way, except for you might be using more reds because you have grapes in there. But you'll keep it just a lot of white and just have these little adjustments of color to get these light colors. Okay, so it's same process. I'm not muted there. Okay, so if anyone wants to show their painting and ask any questions or anything, please feel free. Hey, Wendy. Oh, never mind. Very good. We're going to just make your image bigger. Very good. Did you have a question? Oh, look at that. Very good. Excellent. Timmer. Oh, that's Alpine. Sorry. Great. I'm liking the greens on those. If you notice, there's a lot of variation in your guys' greens because everyone is seeing and interpreting and understanding the mixing differently, which is so cool, I think. Very good. Who would like to go next? Oh, great. We're going to show ours for a second. We'll go next. Very good, you guys. Very good. Yes, so Richard, landscapes are tricky. It is very, very difficult to paint plein air, which is outside where the elements and the light are always changing. You kind of have to, well, I'm still working on that for one, but you kind of have to pick and choose as you go and kind of understand where you're going as a whole. So even though it changes, you still know where you're going. So a lot of landscape painters might take a photo and then work from life for a while, and then they can kind of combine the two. Really, really skilled artists do straight plein air, and it's impressive. It's a hard thing to do. Is anyone else going to show their painting? Who's next?
Cokeville can.
Great, Cokeville.
Okay, I'll just go.
The one that we're working on?
Yeah, so there's one.
Very good.
good. I'm
Okay.
seeing the value in there. Good. Excellent. And I like that you included the highlight. Good, you guys. Good job.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Where did I go take it?
Great. This is Kimmer, right? Very good. I love the orange and blue. Excellent. That burnt sienna, it's a good color. Very good. You guys are doing a great job. I'm so impressed. Excellent. Good motions. Very good. Oh, it looks beautiful. Very good, you guys. Let's see. I think we haven't seen Thane yet. Where? Thane, are you there? Do you want to show yours?
They don't want to. Sorry, we were having major technical difficulties over here with the computer. But
Okay.
does anyone want to? Okay, give me a second. I can't do little.
They did have technical problems.
Okay. Oh, sorry. So there's
Oh, very good.
no, she's laughing at someone else. Do you want to see yours? Okay. Sorry, I got a cover. Oh,
Oh,
she did amazing.
beautiful.
Sorry, no, I think it's beautiful. Do you want to show yours?
Excellent.
Okay.
It's all a learning curve, right?
So learning curve.
Very good. I really like your background green. You did really well with that green. All right. Thank you, Thane. Thank you for sharing. I know it can be intimidating, but I appreciate you sharing. You guys are all doing a really, really great job. Okay. How are we doing on time? So we've got about 10 minutes. So is there anything specific that you'd like to see? If you want me to mix a certain color that's coming, anything like that? So the question is, how do you know when to add the complement, when to put red? My answer is kind of vague. I add red when I don't want it to be so bright, but I don't want it to be too gray, because it still keeps it a fairly rich color compared to adding gray. So if you add red, you still dull it down, but it's not as great. Now, there are situations like the background color where we wanted it gray too, so we did both. It's one of those things, it just takes experimenting. Yeah. Oh, yes, I can. Okay, let me scoop this away. So in this type of situation, the grapes have a lot of difference in color. So what I will do is I will kind of look for the middle color, and that's where I'll start. Just kind of cleaning my area really quick. You can see my work area. I have lots of paper towels. That's not uncommon for me. I usually go through a lot of paper towels. Yes, I will. Okay, so I'm going to mix the color for the grapes, and then I will go over brush cleaning again, just really quick before we end. Okay, so if we look at the grapes, what color are they? I would call them purple, right? So how do we mix purple, blue, and red? So I'm going to start with my red. See, this red is a little bit dirty, but that's okay. Now, blue is really strong, so I'm not going to mix as much. But that's a super red color, so I'm going to add more blue. Now, this ultramarine is very dark, so we're going to get a dark purple first. Now I'm just adding it little by little till I feel like it's purple enough. Now, this is kind of a reddish purple. And if you notice, this is really dark, but it's probably a really good color for the dark side of the grapes. So I might just take a little to the side so I can remember. But because it's dark and we want it lighter, I'm going to take a little bit of white and start there. Now, what white does when you add it to like a solid color like this, it's going to make it more chalky. So if you look, this is a much chalkier purple than what I'm looking for. See that? So I'm going to add red. So I'm just always just comparing. And it is a pretty bright color, so we probably won't need to add much gray or anything. Now there's another little trick. When we talked about when we add the complement of a color, it dulls it down. Now, if you add the color next to a color on the color wheel, it actually makes it brighter. That sounds crazy, but so I'm pretty close on this, but I'm just going to touch a little bit of yellow just because it's next to red, right? So I'm going to add just a little bit. And it's going to just kind of make it pop a little bit more. Now, this is a good middle color for the grapes. Because of what grapes are, they have a lot of variation. On the painting, I put some straight red, I put some dark ones, but I would call this a good middle color for this painting. You know, I tend to keep tweaking a little bit here and there, but I feel like that's a good middle color we could use. So I hope that was helpful. So for cleaning, again, we have our Gamasol in the jar, and even just setting it in is not enough. So you need to really push into the bottom of the jar and really try to get the paint off. Now I have some paint that's clumped up on there, so I'm going to wipe that off with a paper towel. And then I'm going to keep rubbing it into the jar until I feel like all the paint I can get out is out. Then you're going to get your warm water and soap. Now I always like to work the soap in first and then go with the warm water, just so I can really make sure the soap's getting into the brush. And then after you've cleaned it in the soap and water, then you'll shape your brushes so they can dry like that. And then scoop up your paint, keep it in nice piles, put your saran wrap over it, and that will go in the freezer again. Now I do have a question. Next time, so this class covers a lot of material really quickly, and I understand that. So next time we can move on and do underpainting for our final painting, or we can do this again and we can practice more with color. So I just want to kind of see how everybody's feeling and what they would prefer. Do you want to continue with these paintings next time and practice more with color, or do you want to move on? We have one vote for more practice here. Okay. So our students here are wanting to practice more with color next time. So if you guys want to type in the chat the vote for your guys' group, just let me know. Okay, more practice with color for Alpine. Emma was ready to move on. So what I think I'll do is I will explain underpainting next time so you guys can know about it, but I'm not going to necessarily do it because since more people are going to want more practice with colors. So we'll talk about underpainting, but it's not going to be like a requirement for the class. Okay. So we will practice more with colors. So right now, so yes, so on a final painting, what an underpainting is putting color down underneath. So this is usually like one color put down, and there's several different ways to do it. You could add a little bit of value to it, or you can keep it a flat color. There's different options, and we can talk about all that next time and the benefits of it. We'll go over that next time, but plan next time that we'll be practicing more with color. Okay. Thank you, Kimmer. Thank you for being flexible. Okay. So if anyone has any last minute questions, if not, I think we're ready to be cleaning up. So great. You guys did great today. I'm very, very impressed. Richard, do you have any closing remarks before we go?
Hold on, we've got a question here.
Okay. They have.
On our large canvas. Are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. On our large, on the big canvas, when we do that, are we going to put gesso on that, or are we just going to paint over it?
That's a good question. For this class, so the question was, do we put gesso on our canvas for our final painting? If I was at home, I probably would. But here for this class where we're just learning, I don't think it's necessary. Most of these canvases come pre-gessoed. If you read the back, they should say that. And so for this class, it's not necessary to do that. But in some cases, like if I was painting at home, I probably would.
All right, sweet, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, we're good. Kaylee,
Great.
they love the class. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I hope everyone's enjoying this.
They're having a blast.
Great, thank you.